Welcome to the Week 7 breakdowns of Dana White's Contender Series. I can't believe there's only a few weeks left of this season. It's been a decent season overall. A couple standout performances, a couple bangers as well. Obviously, the David McGuigan and Tommy McMillan fights stand out the most thus far. But I think as we're getting deeper into the seasons now, we're going to start to see some more competitive matchups, which will obviously translate into some solid scraps and hopefully some uncovering of really big talent and prospects coming into the UFC. Now, this is going to be a busy week for myself in terms of the amount of events that I'll be covering. I just want to quickly pull it up here. Not only do we have the Contender Series going down on Tuesday, but we have PFL Europe going down on Friday, PFL MENA on Saturday, as well as Cage Warriors 194, LFA 218, and then we cap it off with UFC Perth. I believe I'll have breakdowns for Contender Series, PFL Europe, Cage Warriors, LFA, and UFC. The only one I won't be covering on the YouTube page will be PFL MENA, which you can find on the Lock of the Night Patreon page. And that's where you'll also be able to find the written breakdowns for all of those fights way before I actually throw up on the YouTube page here. So if you want to get in on that, check out the MMALOTN Patreon page and the link in the description below. All right. As I do every week, I'm going to quickly cover Week 6, give my quick thoughts on each of those matchups and the fighters that earned contracts, and then we'll get into the breakdowns for Week 7 here. So the night kicked off on Week 6 with a matchup between Cody Kovanchek and Rafael Uchegbu. Solid scrap for the most part, but it seemed like Uchegbu was really struggling after he got hurt early on in that matchup, and then Kovanchek was able to pull him away in the third round. Very solid showcase there for Kovanchek. Dana was considering not giving him the shot, but the fact that Kovanchek actually got the finish, it absolutely helped him get into the UFC. So another Niagara top team representative making it to the UFC, joining the likes of Jasmine Dazuvicius and Mike Malott. The question becomes, will he get an opportunity on the Vancouver card? Probably not. That's a little bit too quick. I believe that's just less than a month away. So I doubt they'll be able to put anything together for him to debut on that card. Then we had the unfortunate matchup between Paddy McCrory and Insu Huang. I really expected Huang to be a little bit more aggressive, but maybe even McCrory as well. But it seemed like both guys were really struggling with the power that was coming back from either side, and that gave us a very muzzled approach between two guys here. And that's how McCrory go on to win that fight on the scorecards and not earn a contract due to the tepid pace in that fight. I thought if McCrory went for it a little bit harder, or if he went for takedowns from earlier, he probably would have found himself with a submission victory and probably a contract as well. But he just ends up taking it a little bit too slowly, and that ends up biting him in the ass there. Then we had the great showcase with Tommy Gant going out there and roughing Adam Livingston. A couple cage grabs or fence grabs from Livingston prolonged his ability to stay in that fight, but then Gant eventually jumped onto a guillotine and forced a tap from Livingston. Great performance from the collegiate wrestler, 11-0 now. High praise from Daniel Cormier, so I very much look forward to seeing what he brings to the table once he makes his UFC debut. Then we had the 22nd slobber knocker between Iwo Baranowski and Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali, looking great for the first 15 seconds, landed a nasty kick that actually, I believe he dropped Baranowski with it. But as Ali was getting the praise from the commentating team, Baranowski unloaded with a nasty overhand right and eventually got Ali out of there with some ground and pound after that. But big power, some Polish power from Iwo Baranowski. But I always find it difficult to rate these guys that get those quick finishes on the Contender Series, not knowing how they'll do in the UFC, but we'll see. Obviously has some big power, has a good grappling game as we've seen in past fights. We'll see if we can translate that to the UFC now. And then we had the big win for Echer Sosa as he gets a unanimous decision victory over Maxon Lee. Sosa was dealing with a big size and a reach disadvantage in that matchup, but he did a great job in terms of crowding the space of Lee, constantly keeping him on the back foot, landing some takedowns, getting some good control time. He landed some big shots on the feet as well that probably would have dropped lesser men, but Sosa was not losing on a night where he had lost his father a few days prior due to cancer, I believe it was. And Sosa was clearly fighting for a higher power that night and eventually ended up getting his hand raised and thankfully a contract as well. But even without all of the backdrop going into the matchup, Sosa is a very solid and well-rounded fighter with 15 fights to his record now. And I think he's a guy that could, slowly finagle his way into the bantamweight rankings with, a slow and steady approach. Very good all-around fighter, and very much looking forward to seeing what he brings to the table here. So all in all, a decent fight card outside of the first two fights. Gant, Livingston, Barnowski, Ali, and Sosa Lee was fun for as long as those fights lasted, but Kovanchik and McCory fights a little bit stagnant if we're being honest, but I'm sure we'll see a little bit more aggressiveness from some of the fighters that are going to be on this card here. So let's talk about this week 7 card now. 1 second, let me just pull it up here. Decent fight card all around. Some closely lined fights on some of these as well. And then we obviously start off with a big time, or at least what would seem on paper a squash match here. So let's get right into it. In the light heavyweight division, we got Rafael Tobias coming in at -415, going up against Jair de Oliveira, who comes in at +345. Now, starting off on the Tobias side of things, I actually came across him initially back in mid-2023, where he made his LFA debut as a decent favorite against Miguel Porto, I believe the guy's name was. That was a fight that I thought Tobias was controlling for about a round and a half before he ended up getting cracked on with a big shot from his opponent and eventually got put out in that second round. And that's the only loss on Tobias's record since. He's managed to pull off 5 straight victories, finishing all but one of those matchups since that. He is a BJJ brown belt under Jennifer Maia's, former UFC fighter Jennifer Maia's husband, who is also his head coach. Tobias is a bit of a tank of a man with the power that he throws and obviously improving his grappling game to the level of getting to a BJJ brown belt. We know that he can mix that in when he needs to really stay away from the threat that his opponents may hold, especially at the light heavyweight weight class where one punch could really change the tide of an entire fight, just as we saw in Tobias's lone professional loss. Now he's going up against Jair de Oliveira, who's been out of the cage since May of 2024. This Muay Thai specialist, I believe, has opened up his own gym, or at least his own affiliate inside of a gym, training primarily Muay Thai. And that's where we normally see him look to take his fights. He touches his opponents up, has some nasty kicks, has some good power, but he's really been facing tomato can level opposition throughout his 6-fight career. Now, he started his pro career actually back in 2015, then took off about 7 years, mainly training Muay Thai and competing in Muay Thai bouts, and then returned back in April of 2022, where he's put together, like I said, 5 wins since that pro victory that he had. But again, he's been on the sideline since May of 2024, so I'm not entirely sure why the UFC has decided to bring him in for this Contender Series opportunity. Doesn't train with all that big of a gym, has some decent power, but again, pretty much just fighting cab drivers and aging fighters with losing records. It's all about striking for him. It's all about power for him. And I think that's what he's going to try to put on Tobias here. Now, Tobias should win this fight, right? I think he can match the striking of de Oliveira. He might be a little bit behind in the striking, but once this fight gets into the grappling realm, which is where I think Tobias is clearly going to look to take this fight, that's where I think he should start to take over. But de Oliveira, as long as he has some gas in him in that first 2 to 3 minutes, I'm sure he's going to get taken down, but I'm sure he'll work right back to his feet, muscling out of those positions, and then he's going to continue to maximize their opportunities by throwing that big power and looking to land on the chin of Tobias. But if Tobias can navigate that with a disciplined manner, get in on his takedowns and slowly start wearing de Oliveira down, I fully expect Tobias to find that submission or that TKO finish within a round and a half here. So it makes sense why the under 1.5 is at -250. I think Tobias wins. You can't count out de Oliveira's knockout chance. Maybe round 1 de Oliveira KO might be a good hedge opportunity, but for the most part, I expect Tobias to take this to the ground. I'm interested to see what the submission prop will be, but I expect Tobias to get this done under 1.5 rounds, and I think he does it quite dominantly. All right, next up, we got a short notice Justice Torres coming in at +150, going up against Javier Reyes, who comes in at -180. Now, starting off on the Torres side of things, this is a former Fury FC featherweight champion, a nasty victory that he had actually over Vilson and Dragoni, who we saw on PFL a couple weeks back. Torres was able to fend off most of the takedowns that night and then eventually outdamage Dragoni en route to a decision victory. But unfortunately, Torres was unable to defend his title at Fury FC 100 when he came up short, I believe against Cameron Graves was his opponent's name. That night, Graves was able to keep Torres on the back foot, constantly moving him backwards, landing a few takedowns, getting some good control time, but on the feet also getting the better of Torres. Torres, at his best, is a guy that can dictate the pace with his striking, good boxing, good combinations, really mixes it up in the pocket well, and then gets off on most of his damage in those exchanges. You can see the Michael Aswell and Joshua Van in him, considering those are his closest training partners, but I feel like there's just something missing in his game that's going to keep him from getting to the next level and getting to be a force in the UFC realm. On the Fury FC stage, he's very solid. Obviously, his boxing and his striking makes him very difficult to deal with, and his improving takedown defense is obviously improving and getting to the point where he can be competitive in those exchanges and then keep fights in the striking realm where he often gets the better of his opponents. But he's going up against a very tough Javier Reyes here, who I had high hopes for when he came in. Well, he's been successful in the LFA, but once he lost his first LFA fight to eventual champion Le'Veon Douglas, who also earned his UFC contract earlier this season, it started to be a little bit speed bumpy for him. He ended up losing to Chris McCate just 2 fights ago. He bounced back the following month against Lance Lawrence, Lance Lawrence, I believe the guy's name was. Reyes doing a good job in that fight in terms of dictating most of it. Even when he found himself on the back foot, he quickly got himself back in the driver's seat with good combinations, good Muay Thai. But he also has a good grappling game, as we saw on display, where he eventually ended up pulling off the submission there. Now, on paper, you would expect Chris McCate to have the wrestling advantage, but Reyes did have some success in that second round specifically, but was unable to capture more success in that third round, which is why he ended up losing that fight. But he's a solid all-around fighter, with a 21-5 record, 8-fight winning streak he had before he ran into Le'Veon Douglas. Splits his training between his home country of Colombia and then down there in Arizona, where he trains alongside Waldo Cortez Acosta's coach, I believe Ultimate Martial Arts. I could be wrong with the name there, but solid training camp there as well. I think he's just going to be too strong for Torres here. Torres could have some success in the striking realm, but I think for the most part, Reyes will be the one in the driver's seat. I think he'll keep Torres moving backwards. I think he'll keep long leg kicks, long straight shots down the pipe. I think he'll do his best to stay out of the pocket from Torres, but once he gets inside the pocket, that's where I think we'll see him engage in his clinch, his grappling, his takedowns, and then from there, I think he could have some solid success against Torres. This is a fight I ultimately see going to the scorecards with Reyes in the driver's seat for the most part. I think he'll keep his offense going. I think he'll have to deal with a few pocket exchanges with Torres, but I don't think Torres will get off on enough effective damage to really snatch the momentum back. So this will be Reyes' fight for the most part, with a mix of grappling, forward pressure, kicks from the outside, and just controlling it for the most part. So I like Reyes here. I think he wins by decision, and I think this minus 180 line is a solid spot to take a shot on as well. Next up in the women's flyweight division, we got Gisela Chaves coming in at plus 170, going up against Sofia Montenegro, who comes in at minus 200. Now, starting off on the Chaves side of things, she is 5-0. But the majority of her wins have come under a promotion that is actually headed by the gym that she trains out of. So there's a lot of question marks there in terms of the level of opposition that she was getting. From what we see on the outside, her striking looks good. She looks like she has some good Muay Thai, some good combinations, but I think she looks as good as she does because of the lack of competition she's been going up against. She also struggled to finish a couple of those opponents, and it doesn't mean that her opponents had success in those fights, but more so that they were a little bit difficult to put away, and Chaves wasn't really willing to go out there and get clipped or make a mistake and end up losing her perfect record. it's tough to know what her grappling looks like. There's not a lot of tape on her. We're going off of highlights. We really only have her last fight to go off of in terms of an entire fight. And for the most part of that fight, she was in the driver's seat, really just putting it on her opponents. Good combinations, good movement, good strength she showed in the clinch as well. But for the most part, she wants to let go with her strikes and really batter her opponents from distance. But, the running joke this season so far has been anybody coming from Demo Fight is kind of a fraud, right? But the only two that come off the top of my head in terms of evidence that we have for or against that argument is Samuel Sanchez, who knocked out Chasen Blair. So that kind of goes against the whole Demo Fight thing. But then we had, I believe the guy's name was Felipe Franco, the BJJ black belt heavyweight light heavyweight that ended up losing to can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head. Vidal, Freddie Vidal was the guy's name actually. So that's for the Demo Fight kind of being a fraud promotion. It's a lot of question marks there for Chaves, especially going into this first matchup against a legitimate opponent that's not going to be willing to give up the control of fights and allow Chaves to just operate at distance. Now let's get into Montenegro here. This Argentinian fighter comes in with a 6-1 record. Her lone defeat came 3 years ago where she got knocked out in 10 seconds in a fight where she still seemed a little bit green. Still seemed like she wasn't really showing too much respect to her opponents. Considering all the fights that she had going into that matchup, she had finished. She showed a very aggressive style throughout her career, leading into that last loss that she had, or her lone loss. But since then, she's won 3 fights and only one of them by finish. But we're seeing a very measured approach from her, even with the aggressive style that we've seen in some segments of those fights. She loves to move forward. She loves to throw a lot of combinations. She's a Muay Thai specialist. She loves to take fights to the ground when she sees the openings. And she does a great job in terms of controlling those positions when she gets dominant positions. She has great cardio. She's tightening up the defense, which is obviously very important as she takes steps up in competition. She was also a part of the UFC Mexico City Performance Institute when they had done I don't know what they called them, like classes where they brought in a bunch of prospects and kind of just worked through them and really gave a lot of attention to the brighter prospects. And I believe Montenegro was definitely one of those fighters. She got great training with Dominic Cruz, great head coaches there, great training partners as well. And you're seeing that evolutionary game with every single fight that she gets under her belt. Now, that alone makes you agree with why she should be the solid favorite here at minus 200. But I think Chaves is, maybe the lack of resistance that she's faced is going to cause her trouble here against Montenegro, who is clearly going to be the toughest opposition she's gone up against, especially with Montenegro not relenting. She's not going to let Chaves fight this fight at her range. She's not going to let Chaves get comfortable at distance throwing her Muay Thai. And I think that's where we're going to see Chaves start to get more and more discouraged. I think we'll see Montenegro continuously move forward, land some big shots. She might have to eat a few, and that's what kind of gives me a little bit of concern. But we still don't know the level of Chaves, considering that she has not fought all that great of competition. I think we'll see Montenegro mix the game very well here, which is going to cause Chaves some problems. We'll see Montenegro land combinations, mix in some takedowns, get some control time. And I think that ultimately sees Montenegro win this fight on the scorecards. But I'm going to wait this out. I want to see where the line ends up going. Minus 200 would kind of be, maybe a little bit past the limit that I'd play on a fighter like Montenegro, especially with the question marks that we have in Chavez's game. Again, on paper and from the outside, she looks okay. But we're not going to know what that means until she faces legitimate resistance, and she's going to face that this weekend with Montenegro. But I'm going to go Montenegro and Montenegro by decision. All right, next up, probably the best fight on the card. We got at least best fight in terms of the talent level between these fighters and the potential that they have. We got Brian Zurcher coming in at minus 150, going up against Murtazali Magomedov, who comes in at plus 130. Now, we'll start off on the Zurcher side of things, who I originally came across back in early of 2022, where he performed for the PFL Challenger Series and showcased a great version of himself to go out there and win that fight. He's undefeated, 9-0, showcases a brutal Muay Thai style, does a great job in terms of fighting just as effectively on his back foot as he does on his front foot. And he's fine with just being in the, moving backwards and still throwing offense. He shows great activity, good power. He has a nasty check left hook, which he actually got with his last victory. That's how he ended up getting the knockout in the second round of that matchup. A guy who's been on the sideline for a little bit longer than I would like to see. I believe he hasn't fought since June of 2024 for PFL. He was scheduled to fight in August of last year, but ended up having to pull out of that matchup. He's even split his time with some Latin American promotions during his time with the PFL. But I was so happy to hear that he's getting this Contender Series opportunity, because this is a guy that's ready for that level. His improving takedown defense game has gotten to a level where no opponents can really have success against him there. He has great takedown defense, immediately works back to his feet if he does get taken down, and does a good job in terms of reversing those positions even when he's up against the cage with his back there. At his best, he operates with a good mobile striking game, not meaning that he just sticks and moves, but engages and forces his opponents to engage in the pocket with him, where he often gets off on big shots that not a lot of opponents can deal with his power. He has great cardio to go 15 minutes as well. And it's not like he's had to show off his cardio last time around recently as he's finished all 5 of his last opponents. Now, he's going up against a tough Murtazali Magomedov, who has pretty much cut his teeth in the last half of his career under a very tough promotion called OKTAGON. Not to be confused with OKTAGON from the European side of things, but I believe this is a Kazakhstani, or at least in one of those stands promotion, OKTAGON. Usually turns out some solid competition, some solid prospects. Magomedov was actually in the corner of Idris Alibi, who ended up losing a couple weeks ago in the Ultimate Fighter finale. But he's 9-0, showcases a very crisp and clean striking game from distance with the length that he usually brings to the cage. When he wants to get fights into the grappling realm, he showcases a very good game there. We've seen him put in some bad spots and work through those spots. The ability to battle back from adversity, that has really helped him, especially when he's fighting these tougher forms of competition. There was a spot where he was in a very deep rear naked choke, and he was able to work out of that spot and eventually get a submission victory of his own in the following round. Last time around, he got dropped badly and nearly finished by a tough Brazilian veteran, but he was able to bounce back from that, eventually get a nasty knee knockout in the second round of that fight. So he's gone through the ringer with some of these opponents and still come out on the winning end, showcasing that he can be very dangerous. He represents Kyrgyzstan, similar to Valentina Shevchenko, but he has trained in Dagestan a few times. Obviously training with the guys there in Kazakhstan as well, with Idris Alibi. I believe he's been training at Syndicate MMA. I could be wrong to just end off his training camp here to get acclimated to the Vegas side of things. Solid fighter, fun fighter. Now, this is a tough one. One that I thought that the Russian tax would really impact Magomedov here. I know he's not Russian, but a lot of people that are just betting these fights from the outside looking in are going to see that Magomedov name and be like, okay, this guy's Russian, mainly means that he probably should win. But it seems that people are giving value to the experience that Zurcher has and his time that he spent with the PFL, and showcasing that he is a very solid fighter. I think this is a matchup that Zurcher can drag Magomedov into those pocket exchanges, and his power is going to end up being more effective than the straight shots that Magomedov ends up throwing. If Magomedov wants to get his grappling going, I think he's going to struggle there, and that's going to cause him to slow down and allow Zurcher to really start picking up the pace. I think we'll see Zurcher land big. I think we'll see him land often, and I think we'll see him eventually catch Magomedov and eventually put him out in this matchup. The one side of me hopes that this is a back and forth battle that goes to a split decision where Dana ends up giving both these guys a contract, but I really think that Zurcher has the power to shut out the lights of Magomedov, and I think he does it quite emphatically here. I'm going to wait, because we might get a better line on Zurcher, anything closer to that minus 130, minus 125 range, especially for a fight that I expect to be close. I still expect the Mexican fighter to end up getting his hand raised here. So give me Zurcher by knockout. I think if Magomedov wins, that probably comes inside the distance as well. I think the public total right now is set at 1.5, which I think is a little bit sketchy in case you want to look for violence here. So if you're able to get the under 2.5, around that -120 to -150 range, that might not be a bad spot either to take a shot on. But I think it's going to be the Mexican Brian Zurcher who ends up getting his hand raised here. Speaking of violence, that is exactly what we are expecting in this headliner here for week 7 between Gianni Barbir, who comes in at -125, going up against Mantis Kondratavicius, who comes in at +105. Now, when I studied this fight, it was actually -110 on either side. And by the time I finished the card, we saw a little bit of love come in on the Croatian fighter who will start off on the side of. Now, he has a 7-0 record, finishing pretty much all of those opponents. Very good power, takes command of fights right away, walks his opponents down, lands those big shots, and often puts them away. His 7 fights have actually been spread out over 9 years. He had a 3-year layoff between his 3rd and 4th fight, then another 3-year layoff between 2019 and 2022. But since returning from that hiatus, he's gone 3-0 for FNC, where he's won the title and defended it 2 times as well. He's a finisher in all sense of the word. 4 of those wins by knockout, 3 of those wins by submission. He has faced sketchy competition for most of his career outside of Andy Vertacic and Maziakowski. We have not seen him in much danger outside of that Maziakowski fight where he was taken down, held down for a little bit, ate some damage, but then he eventually worked out of that position and eventually got a dominant position of his own where he rained down some nasty elbows and forced a stoppage from the referee. At his best, Barbir is a fighter that normally utilizes an explosive striking approach to hurt and put his opponents away. His takedown defense normally holds up early, but if you stay on him, he will give up those spots and eventually succumb to those spots, as I think better fighters will be able to, but he's been able to work out against the level of competition he's been going up against. He's going up against a very tough Mantis Kondratavicius, who came on my radar back in March when he made his Cage Warriors debut against the always entertaining and ever volatile Michael Chamu. If you guys know Michael Chamu, he is at the time, he was a 6-4 fighter who normally goes out there and throws big shots and is usually successful in knocking out his opponents. But if he isn't, he often slows down quickly and gets finished. And that's kind of what happened against Kondratavicius, who stuffed the first takedown from Chamu and then sniped him down the pipe and put his lights out. Absolutely nasty work there from the Latvian fighter. Now, Kondratavicius fights with a little bit of a bladed karate stance. He likes to get in and out of the pocket, but often is the one dictating the pace of fights, moving forward, putting his straight shots down the pipe, and putting opponents away. His grappling is kind of mediocre, both from an offensive and defensive perspective. His lone loss came against eventual Aries FC champion Virgil Ogden, who really put it on him in the grind, up against the cage, getting that body lock, even in the clinch, landing some good shots with his knees, some elbow strikes as well, or some shoulder strikes. Eventually dragged the fight to the ground and really wore Kondratavicius down, and then eventually got that finish late in that second round. I'm expecting this to be a car crash of a fight. This is really a pick'em. But even if it was still at a pick'em, I'd still lean with the Latvian fighter. I think the speed, length, and range of Kondratavicius will give Barbir some problems here, and that might either walk Barbir onto a big shot or Kondratavicius ends up sniping him from distance. I think if Kondratavicius wants to take this to the ground, he could have some success there, but I expect both these guys to take their time a little bit in the first opening minutes, but it's just a matter of time before Kondratavicius lands that big shot down the pipe to put Barbir away. The under 1.5 currently sits at -180 at the time of this recording. I don't mind that either. I expect one of these guys to get the finish. I'm expecting it to be the Latvian fighter, but I would not bang on anybody looking to take Barbir here either. But I'm going to go Kondratavicius, round 1 knockout. This fight probably should be pretty quick. It might start off a little bit tepid with both guys trying to find their range, but once they start to get going, I expect this fight to be finished shortly thereafter, and I expect it to be Mantis Kondratavicius who ends up getting his hand raised. There you guys go. Week 7 breakdowns dropped for you guys there again. A very busy week of content that I got. I will be hammering away at studying up on all of these fights, and I hope to have the UFC Perth breakdowns out for you guys in video form by Monday evening, hopefully late afternoon at best. It's a 14 fight card, a ton to get through. So I might as well start to get work on it. Again, I already have some track plays for this Contender Series card on the Lock of the Night Patreon page, which you can find in the link in the description below. Or if it's already Tuesday afternoon and you're watching this video, you can check the pinned comment in the comment section, and you can find the picks there as well. Otherwise, good luck on all your action this week, folks. And I'll see you guys again on Monday for the UFC Perth breakdowns. See you then. Peace.